Hello and happy Halloween. Well, it's not quite Halloween yet, but I wanted to get this video out before Halloween in case you are in the predicament that I was around 2 weeks ago when I was frantically searching the internet for a Sally from The Nightmare Before Christmas Halloween costume. And I don't know about you, but paying $75 to $125 for a Halloween costume that I know with a little bit of effort I can make myself just feels so wrong. I scoured the internet for patterns and tutorials, but I couldn't find anything that suited what I wanted to do. So I decided I might as well turn it into a challenge and try to make my own Sally dress with no plan and no pattern. I am what you would hesitate to call an amateur sewist. I've made a few things that are objectively wearable, but they're certainly not going in Gucci anytime soon, or maybe even Forever 21. But honestly, I struggle to follow patterns, and even more than that, I hate printing them out. Call me a tree hugger, or call me impatient. I wanted to see if I could make this dress from scratch with some fabric and a dream. So let's get started. First thing I did was draw a sketch of the dress that I hoped to make. Bear in mind, I have never sketched a design before. I just wanted some type of proof of concept. I decided a wrap dress would probably be easiest so that the size would be somewhat adjustable. I also tried to map out which colors I wanted to go where on the dress. In this process, I decided I wanted to at least line the top part of the dress. Once it was done, I was so proud, and I had this ridiculous idea in my head that I could actually execute it perfectly. And then I realized I didn't have a single fabric color that I needed, so it was off to Fabricland. I hand selected the materials I needed, and when I say that, I mean I was burrowing through the fabric scrap pile, just looking for things that resembled the colors I was looking for with absolutely no regard to fabric material. First, I chose this brown stretchy fabric. It has no label on it, so I can only assume that it's some type of like nylon, polyester blend. I chose it because it was soft and I thought it would feel nice as a liner. I also grabbed this pink fabric, a couple of yellows, a green, and of course this random pattern design, because why would I leave the store without picking up something that I have no intention or use for? Unfortunately, that is just the price you pay when you go to Fabricland. I also got a few random pieces just in case I needed more for my patches. I was relying heavily on the fact that the character is basically a Frankenstein ragdoll and sews on her own arms and legs throughout the movie. So if it looked messy, it was intentional, right? I didn't find any pure blue in the scrap fabric bin, so I went and got 10 inches from a cheap cotton blend that I found. Altogether, my scrap fabric hit a grand total of $15.04. Take that, Spirit Halloween.
I fear this is gonna be more difficult than I thought.
So I started with the top, and I knew I wanted to make a V-neck situation for the wrap. I wasn't really thinking about the rest of the dress and how it would all connect. That was definitely an early mistake. But I have to give myself credit for actually trying to take proper measurements. Bust, rib cage, shoulders, even the length from my neck down to below my armpit. I did write these numbers down, I just barely referenced them after the first hour. On the liner, I traced 1/2 of the top. I don't have a cutting board or an X-Acto knife, I have kitchen scissors. Sorry, not sorry. Sally would have done it. It only gets worse.
That's why you don't eyeball a seam allowance.
Then I pinned the 2 triangles to the back piece to make sure that it would fit. There was this drapey thing going on in the back. I don't know how this happened, but honestly, I didn't hate it and I was afraid to change it, so I just left it. I cut out triangles to lay on top of the liner for the front of the dress. I measured each one to fit and then cut without pinning, so it's a little off. How will they know? I did end up pinning the liner to the front piece for the sewing part, and I realized quickly that I made a crucial error.
I'm stupid.
I pinned the wrong side, so they were facing the same direction. I unpinned it, I repinned it, nothing had been sewn, everything was fine. And then I took out my sewing machine, which I hadn't used in 4 months, so it took a little bit of troubleshooting. She has a name, it's Kate Needleson. Sometimes I call her Stitch, because I don't want to use the B word. The first problem I ran into is that the liner fabric was a lot stretchier than the front-facing fabric.
Perfect.
This continued to be an issue throughout the entire construction of the dress, and I actually didn't line the bottom at all. I had to keep adjusting the foot to prevent the fabric from bunching up. I also needed to make ties for the wrap dress itself, so I cut out 2 long pieces of fabric, sewed them flat, and then flipped them inside out to make a tube. I did this after sewing 1/2 of the top already, so I only had the foresight on the second half to actually attach that tie to the inside before I had sewn it and flipped it right side out. So later that night, I took some stitches out of the pink side and did the same thing to side A. My brain was doing mental gymnastics trying to figure out how to attach these with as few seams being shown as possible. For the back panel, I just attached the top corners to either side. Once that was on and looking pretty good, I measured the distance between my shoulder and the bottom of my armpit and stitched up the side. At this point, I was very pleased with myself. The front looked okay. The back was questionable, so I got to work on the skirt. So I had little to no plan for the bottom of the dress. I started by laying out the top part on my dining room table and placing scrap fabric around to try to figure out a layout. Originally in the sketch, I wanted to do something closer to the movie version where each fabric was a different shape, but I honestly couldn't wrap my brain around how to measure and attach all of those pieces of fabric without it just turning into a mess. So I experimented with some long rectangular strips. Eventually, I decided to cut the pieces into around 8-inch squares and make a more traditional patchwork design. I did run out of space on my circular table, so I took it to the bed. This was the original iteration of the bottom. I wasn't too concerned about exact lengths on the sides or the bottom because I wanted it to look a little bit messy. At least that's what I kept telling myself. And quickly realized it was way too long. I didn't measure it at all, and I forgot that I'm only 5'3". So I reduced the pattern on the bottom by 1 full square. Because it's Halloween, I'm not gonna wear a mid-calf dress. You have to be at least a little bit sexy. I also swapped out a couple of the squares that I didn't feel were going well together. I unpinned the top from the bottom and went back to my sewing machine to get the bottom pieces together. This part was tricky because, again, the fabrics were all very different from each other in terms of material. The pink stretchy fabric beside the yellow cotton was not faring well. And worst of all was this green fabric. Remember the one I chose at Fabricland? Big mistake. This fabric was so much thicker and so different from all the other fabrics I had chosen. The tension on my sheen was in wackadoodle mode. Thread kept doing this thing where it was like unraveling itself and moving upward. It was extremely tricky to work with and did not jive well with the other fabrics, but the color was so perfect. Another thing I didn't really think about because I wasn't using a pattern was seam allowance. I basically cut the pieces to the size that I wanted them to be and didn't account for how much of it I would lose when attaching them together. Because of that, the skirt was shorter and also more narrow than I expected. Basically, I didn't allow for my badonkadonk. Figured that was something I could deal with after I drew on the designs. I don't know why I didn't address it right away, but you know what? I wasn't being monitored. So the next day I sewed the top part of the dress to the bottom part of the dress, which wasn't as challenging as I anticipated it to be, except for that stupid stretchy liner fabric, which if you haven't figured out by now is just the mortal enemy of this story. At this point, I was deep into an episode of Gilmore Girls and I decided to draw the designs onto the fabric. I took all the black Sharpies in my house I could find and chose the one that had the best tip on it. If you know, you know. Sharpies, they get nubby after a while and then they're like basically impossible to use on anything except for printer paper. I did try to be sort of movie accurate with this, with the big black circles and vertical lines on the blue, simple polka dot pattern on the yellow. There was also this funky like amoeba shaped pattern on the pink, but because that fabric was ribbed, I couldn't put it on there, so I put it on yellow instead. That was an artistic decision and I stand by it. And at this point, I was honestly starting to feel high from the fumes of the Sharpie. Surprisingly, the pattern didn't turn out that bad. I think it actually might be the best part of this dress. I just really have to hope that it doesn't get wet because it's not a fabric marker and it will definitely start to bleed if it does get wet. Good thing it rarely rains on Halloween in Toronto. The following day, I tried the dress on and honestly, I was loving it. Yes, I had to wrap it in a very specific way and it pretty much only looked good from the front. And if I took so much as a step, it was like a really big wardrobe malfunction downstairs, but I was smiling ear to ear. So proud. The top was laying kind of weird. I think I measured it incorrectly. So I tried it on with this light blue bra underneath for a little bit of coverage. Time will tell if I actually end up wearing it like that on Halloween because I don't have my other accessories yet. You'll have to follow me on Instagram and TikTok to find out if I do, or if I did, depending on when you're watching this video, because today it's October 11th. I did end up adding a piece of fabric to the bottom to make it safer for me to wear without flashing somebody. Of course, I had to torture myself one more time with that green fabric. And as a finishing touch, I did want to add some little sleeves. So I took a square of yellow fabric that I hadn't used yet, cut it in half, and then I cut a freehand scalloped edge. I think they turned out super cute and it made it more movie accurate. And drum roll please. Here is my finished Sally dress. I can't believe I actually did it. I'm gonna give myself a 6 out of 10 on execution and an 8 out of 10 on effort, mainly because I did put a lot of thought and energy into how I was gonna put it together, but I lost a couple points for lack of preparation and for definitely choosing the wrong fabrics. Considering I only spent $15 on the materials and again, I wasn't using a pattern, I'm surprised that it even remotely looks like the character. I didn't even know if this video was ever gonna get made. And it was honestly kind of an accountability tool for me. Since I'm getting this video up before Halloween, I haven't finished the other components of the costume, like the hair and the socks and the blue skin. So if you're watching this video before November 1st, 2024, you're gonna have to go over to my Instagram or TikTok and follow me to find the completed look. If it is after that date, congratulations, you don't have to wait. You can just go onto my Instagram or my TikTok and see the pictures and videos of the final look. Thank you so much for watching and let me know if you'd like to see more amateur sewing projects with or without a pattern. Let me know in the comments what you think of the result and what you might have done differently. Stay sweet, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!